Hey, I'm Oliver. Here's a question that keeps historians awake at night. How does the world's most celebrated library simply vanish? Not burn once, not crumble in a day, but fade so completely that even its ruins are arguable. Stay with me, because the surprising answer is that no single villain did. Picture a maze of papyrus scrolls in sunlit halls. Scholars travel to copy, debate, and translate. Sailors docking in the harbour are sometimes required to surrender books for duplication. If the copies are returned instead of the originals, who would notice? Already you can feel the first clue. The appetite for knowledge is so large that ownership blurs. But here's the unexpected truth. When we follow the trail, what we find is not one cataclysm, but many small knives. Yes, fires and riots scar the city's long, turbulent life. A siege that ignites warehouses near the docks could singe thousands of scrolls. Decades later, political purges might silence certain texts without leaving a receipt. Yet the disappearance looks like neglect disguised as inevitability. You probably haven't heard this before, but papyrus is a living thing. It breathes, it drinks humidity, it molds. Without constant care, a world's memory can quietly rot from the inside. Imagine a new administrator who favors marble statues over maintenance budgets. The doors still open, the scholars still talk, but behind closed cabinets, ink fades, fibers crumble, and good intentions become a slow erasure. Here is where the plot thickens. The library may not have been a single building at the end. Many accounts suggest a campus of collections, a main repository, satellite rooms, archives, even temples that doubled as reading rooms. If you want something to vanish without a trace, scatter it. Then shake a city with earthquakes, dynastic feuds, and economic shocks. What disappears is not a monument. It is a network, strand by strand. But wait, what about the famous stories that blame a conqueror, a decree, or a fanatical mob? They make cleaner headlines, and some events almost certainly damage the stacks. Yet historians parsing the sources find contradictions, later embellishments, and gaps big enough to sail a trireme through. The more you demand a single culprit, the more the evidence slips like sand. There is another twist. The library's ambition created its own vulnerability. It tried to collect everything: astronomy and anatomy, epic poetry and law codes, travelogues. But collecting is not preserving. Copyists are human. A misread word here, a smudged line there, and over centuries the signal decays. Think of it like a chorus that loses pitch even as the singing grows louder. So was it destroyed? Or did it dissolve? Maybe both. Consider the pressures. Shifting trade routes starve cities of money. Religious and political priorities redirect patronage. A new technology, the bound codex, pulls prestige away from papyrus rolls. When prestige moves, budgets follow. And when budgets move, caretakers vanish. In an age before climate control and fire suppression, silence is enough to finish the job. Now ask the unsettling question. If a library can die this way, how would we know it lived in the first place? Because echoes remain. Fragments quoted by later authors, catalogues listing works we no longer possess, technical treatises that assume earlier experiments. It is like seeing the outline of a constellation after the brightest stars have burned out. And here is why it truly matters. We love a dramatic finale, but the real danger to knowledge is rarely a single blaze. It is 1,000 quiet decisions to fund something else. It is the belief that someone, somewhere, is making another copy. It is the comfort of thinking that important things cannot disappear. They can. Stay with me, because in part 2, we will follow 3 strands that survive the fog. How politics curated the shelves as much as scholarship. How climate and material science explain the fragility of ancient media. And how rival collections quietly siphoned away the best texts. By the end, the mystery of the missing library will feel less like a crime scene and more like a mirror. The question is not who burned it. The question is how we keep our own libraries from fading the same way. Start with politics, because shelves are never neutral. The Great Library grew under rulers who used knowledge as statecraft. They appointed scholar administrators, funded translations, and sent agents to borrow books across the sea. When a champion of learning sat on the throne, catalogues expanded. When a cautious treasurer took over, copyists went unpaid and lamps dimmed early. A collection reflects the hand that feeds it. Censorship rarely looks like a bonfire. It can look like reclassification or a quiet order to move a shelf to storage and never return it. It can look like a decree that foreign texts must be reviewed, which means slowed, which means forgotten. Even a simple policy, like preferring one dialect, can erase voices over time. Ask who gained when certain authors grew scarce, and the list of suspects lengthens. Now, shift to the material itself. Papyrus is tough, yet vulnerable, a reed pressed into sheets and glued into long rolls. It dislikes damp air, sudden temperature shifts, and smoke. Fungus invades seams. In a healthy institution, preservation has a rhythm. Unroll, dust, air, repair, recopy. Break the rhythm and decay accelerates. You might still see rows of cylinders, but their words are already slipping away. Here is the unexpected truth. Preservation depends on redundancy. When scholars kept multiple copies of prized works in different rooms and cities, time had to work harder to erase them. When a single master roll sat on one shelf, fate needed only a leak in the roof. That is why some authors survive through scattered quotations in later writers. A sentence here, a diagram there, and a lost mind can be rebuilt from shards. Stay with me, because the third strand is the most human. Rival collections competed. Other cities built archives, recruited the same stars, and offered better stipends. A brilliant teacher could move, taking students and fresh manuscripts along. Over decades, this brain drain siphoned rare items away. No flame required. Prestige migrated, and documents followed the people who cared for them. You probably have not heard this before, but the library also changed with technology. As culture shifted from scroll to codex, the economics of copying shifted too. Codices are compact and portable. They thrive in private rooms. As elites built personal libraries, the central storehouse mattered less. 1,000 small collections can be wonderful for learning, but terrible for the survival of any one copy if repairs and recopying do not keep pace. Add one more piece, earth moves. Tremors crack foundations and break shelves. A minor quake does what an arsonist cannot. It turns order into chaos and leaves nobody to blame. Afterward, caretakers triage damage. Philosophy waits while ceilings are patched. Months later, the unread rolls face new enemies: dust, insects, and the sense that the emergency has passed. So why does this story matter now? Because every digital archive faces the same temptations. Passwords expire, formats change, links rot. When budgets tighten, migrations and backups feel like chores that can wait. That is the modern version of leaving papyrus in a damp room. To honor the vanished library, we build systems that assume failure and still keep words alive. Picture a last walk through those halls at dusk. A young scholar copies a medical text while an older teacher debates the motions of the stars. Down the corridor, a clerk boxes up rolls to return to a ship captain who will not wait. None of them think the building can die. That is how most endings begin. And yet, a rescue hides in the ruin. Fragments travel. A catalogue survives. A later astronomer preserves an earlier table of numbers inside his own work. Centuries pass, and a strand we thought severed returns. The lesson is not despair, it is design. Knowledge endures when it is duplicated, dispersed, translated, and loved. So here is my question as we close. If you could save one shelf, which ideas would you copy first? And where would you hide a second copy so time could not find it? Think about your answer, because the next mystery asks the same thing in a different voice. When an island appears on maps and then vanishes, what survives of a place that leaves almost nothing behind?